Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and joining us for lunch for our March info and training session. My name is Andy Moore, and I am the Executive Director of Let's Fix This. If by some chance you're tuning in for the very first time because you heard about us, we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit, kind of a grassroots organization, and our whole purpose in life is to try to get regular folks engaged in government, particularly at the state and the city level, and try to make that happen in ways that are meaningful and productive, and not just to make noise. There's certainly a place for that in the world, but we really want to move the needle. Like, we really want to make Oklahoma better, and through some very specific ways. I'm joined today with my friend Anna Facci.
Hey.
She is the Government Affairs Director for CAIR Oklahoma. And we're going to kind of go through a few things real quick, and then we'll let Anna talk for a little bit, and then hopefully answer your questions. So if you have some questions about advocacy, if you've got questions about going to the Capitol, if you've never been before, that kind of thing, then please go ahead and type them in. I've got my iPad, we've got both of our phones. Yeah. We'll read it one way or another, and hopefully be able to respond. So I wanted to start off with just a quick reminder, and we'll hit this again at the end, about our big events for March. So we do the same things every month in hopes that different people can come every month.
Yeah.
Or the same people would be cool as well.
Yeah.
And part of that is we do a Capitol Day and a Capitol Crawl. They both occur on the same day, but this month, that's March 22nd. It's a Wednesday. And the Capitol Day is in the morning where we go to the Capitol, and it's a day at the Capitol for regular folks. Like, every group's got their day at the Capitol. Our events are for everybody else, right?
Yeah.
Like, you all care. And Muslim Day at the Capitol was last week?
Last Thursday, a week ago today.
And so, every group has their day at the Capitol. But I know a lot of folks that don't feel like they fit into any particular group. So that's why we're doing this. So we start at 9 o'clock in the morning. We're going to be on the second floor in the Blue Room, which is kind of fancy. Have you been in the Blue Room?
I have been in the Blue Room a few times, yeah. It's pretty stately, right? It's the governor's Blue Room, and you actually have to reserve it through the office of the governor, not just the general Capitol building. It's pretty cool. And
the reason we're moving rooms is that last month, I thought there might be about 30 people show up, and there was like 65 that signed in. And so we're moving to a bigger room. It's got a capacity for 90. Man, it'd be awesome, though, if we got too big for that. I'd be happy to find another solution. So please come. So second floor in the Blue Room at 9 o'clock on March 22nd. That first hour from 9 to 10, we're going to get together and have a bunch of people just kind of come in and talk. So we'll provide some instructions about what we're doing that day, how to navigate the building.
Yeah.
We have a few legislators that will come and join us and just kind of say a few things about why having people be involved and like actually come to the Capitol and have conversations is so important. I do kind of like to have legislators be the ones to like explain how we navigate the building, like where the restrooms are, where the snack bar is, because it's their office building. I feel like it's their responsibility. I'm happy to provide maps and try to supplement that, but I think it means more to visitors to hear it from their elected officials. So we'll do that kind of intro hangout time from about 9 to 10, and then around 10 o'clock, we kind of break up and we go visit our legislators' offices and do that face-to-face component. And that's the part that's super important and that hardly anybody ever does. When we started this last year, it was really just a way to, for some of us, to go and like meet our legislators. I know a ton of folks. Every month we have new people. Like almost 80% of our group last month had never been to the Capitol before. So that was close to 50 people. And that was super exciting to have them come and say, I never have met my rep or my senator. I want to do that. We'll help you find out who they are if you don't already know. And we'll even go with you to their office if you need someone to go with you. If you're nervous, we can hold hands. That's fine. This all started because last year I had never gone before. And
wow, you've never been before last year?
No, it all started really, I thought about like, we should just go do that. And so we did, and it turns out a lot of other people wanted to do it. So we just keep going every month. 9 to 10 in the Blue Room, 10 to 11 or 10 to noon, go do office visits. if the House or Senate's in session, some of us may go in and sit in and observe them in session. That's always interesting. And then around noon, kind of go eat lunch wherever you want. I usually go eat tacos because I like tacos. Ooh, but
good call.
I don't know, Chinese food sounds good. Anyway, then we'll come back in the afternoon around 1:30, and it's kind of the same thing. It's really up to you. If you didn't get a chance to meet with someone in the morning and you want to try to catch them in the afternoon, between 1 and 1:30 is a good time to try to catch them. Hahowever, I really do recommend that you call their office first and try to set up an appointment. I need to call my senator and try to schedule an appointment with him. I just moved and I haven't met him yet. Greg Treat is my senator.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting a few minutes in front of him. And part of what we do, I think a lot of folks come and they aren't sure what to say or how to say. A lot of folks come in, I got lots of passion and I really care and this is important, but I don't want to just scream at him. Because we all know that's probably not the most effective way to get your point across.
Sure.
So we can kind of help with that. So that's kind of the day piece. That's the Capitol Day. And then in the evening we do a Capitol Crawl, which is really, we got the idea to just do a pub crawl and invite some legislators. It's been cool. We've done it twice now.
Yeah, I think I've been to both of them now.
And we do more than just bars. We try to do a restaurant or something or a couple of things first because not everyone drinks, and that's totally fine. I would like my grandma to come sometime, and she's not going to go to a bar.
Right.
And so we do have, so this month we're going to go to Big Truck Tacos first at 6 o'clock that night. Hopefully we'll have good weather. We can all hang out outside, have some tacos, and hang out there for about an hour. And I know I've heard from a few legislators. Senator A.J. Griffin said she's going to come. I think Representative Carol Bush from Tulsa is also going to come. Wow. We are really hoping to get some rural folks to show up. It's easy for folks in the metro to come, and we want them to still come too. So, Representative Dunnington and Waukee and all of you guys that usually come to our things, please still come. But we would like some other folks that don't live around here, but they're in town for session.
Right.
Sometimes it's got to be boring in the evenings, I would guess. If you are from the Panhandle and you're in here, you might want to hang out with some of your coworkers in a relaxed way and actually hear from some people. So our goal is not to ambush anybody. It's really just to have a face-to-face conversation and get to hang out and meet some of these people. Kind of face-to-face, like you do with anybody, right? We're all just people. They vote too, we vote. We're all in this together. And if we're going to make this place any better, Lord knows we need to have all hands on deck and learn how to be civil with one another and hear differing opinions. I think we're all guilty of getting in our silos, and so I would welcome the opportunity to hear other sides, and because there's often good points. You don't have to agree, but you don't have to fight about it either. So that's kind of our summary. I'll come back and recap that at the end. But where we're at right now in the session is last Thursday actually, was the deadline for hearing bills. Was it last week? No, next Thursday.
It's next Thursday
is the deadline.
Is the third reading deadline. Last Thursday was the tentative committee deadline.
Right. So everything in their chamber of origin, in the House and the Senate, had to be heard by their committees in that chamber by last week, and then it has to be heard on the floor for the next 2 weeks, or last week and this week. Until the 16th. And everything's got to be heard on the floor in the chamber of origin by next Thursday. And after that, they switch sides. So all the House bills that passed go to the Senate, and the Senate bills go to the House. And so that will happen by next week. And then when we are there the following week, everything will be in committee. So it'll be in the opposite chambers committee. And that's kind of our next opportunity to know what bills are gaining traction. Stuff starts to kind of float to the surface, and gives us a chance to chime in and tell our senators and our House reps, what we support, what we don't, what we oppose.
Right, and so to give you an idea of the kind of volume change that you're dealing with here, there are over 2,000 total bills introduced, and by last week there were just around 1,000 that had made it out of committee. So on both sides of the chamber, out of both chambers. So now we're dealing with calling out even more of those 1,000 in terms of which ones will pass each respective floor. And so when we're talking about which bills are catching traction in Senate committees, we're knowing that those bills are going to come out of Senate committees because they've already, or vice versa, right? Senate bills will come out of House committees and House bills will come out of Senate committees because they've already been actually through 2 or 3 levels of vetting already.
Yeah. Really, I mean, most years it's about 2,000-ish bills right away, and it starts really kind of being pared down as we go. So if there's something that you really care about, the next couple of weeks, you really need to kind of tune in.
Keep an eye on it, for
keep
sure.
following on it. And we'll kind of talk more about that maybe in a minute as well. I mean, one last thing, probably the big issue that is still on the table, and certainly not finished yet, is the state budget, or lack thereof. And this is the issue that really kind of undercuts everything else, right? Like, most everything that we care about that comes from the state has got to be funded in some way, and we keep having less and less money every year. A lot of state agencies are working with like 25% less money than they had just a few years ago, and that's, I mean, you guys all know that's why you're tuned in to this thing called Let's Fix This, because we've had some big cuts. So the issue this year, I think the governor said it, Preston Dorfliner said it, everyone, I've said it. Not that I'm an authority, but I think we all know that we've got a huge revenue problem.
Right.
Everyone wants a bigger slice of the pie, and what we need is a bigger pie. If everyone wants a big slice of cake and all you have is a cupcake, no one's getting a big slice. And so we're down to cupcake size budgets. So the House and Senate are looking at some revenue options. I think there's some really reasonable ones. I saw a blog post today from Together Oklahoma that had like 8 options on there. I think we, the public, have to make some difficult decisions that I think from the people I hear from, a lot of folks are saying, I'm okay paying an extra $40 or $50 a year if it means that like my kids get to have like art class or music class, or if they can, we can fill some potholes in the highways or bridges that don't crumble, or healthcare that doesn't cost an extra, like literally an arm and a leg. So that's kind of the big thing. Lots of other stuff's important. I know today you were up there earlier, paying attention to criminal justice.
The 1482, I think that number is correct, which sometimes the numbers get muddled. So the intent of the bill is to basically overturn reforms that were made with State Question 780 and 781. So we're up there lobbying to tell folks, it's the will of people. We voted this way, and stop trying to contradict what we really needed, which was the reform that we voted for. And then also there is a new predatory lending bill that's on the table to create a new type of predatory loan that a lot of people are very concerned about.
In a year where we had a few bills to like limit payday lending, those kind of all lost traction, and a new bill popped up that would create like another really high interest rate loan. Perhaps
one of the most predatory types of loans, and just in the way that it's structured.
When I was in school, I learned about payday lenders being referred to as lenders of last resort. Like when you were in dire straits, that's who you went to. And the stats on it are pretty rough. 538, if you, the economists, if you pay attention to them, they did a podcast about payday lending a while back that was just like a gut punch. No one goes there because unless they absolutely feel like they have to, and it's a terrible deal, and it makes it worse.
I would really encourage you guys, if you're following along at home, we'll talk in a little bit about how you can listen in from home onto the debates in both the House and the Senate. But if you're following along at home and you have the ability to this afternoon, if you see the payday lending issue come up, I highly encourage you to listen in on the debate on the issue. I think there will be some really passionate and good debate about it.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. If you don't already know, you can watch committees and floor debates online for free. okhouse.gov and oksenate.gov. If your office, if you got a place that you can, if you listen to music, you can listen to that if you're interested. Sometimes I pull it up at work and just listen to it in the background. unless it makes me furious.
Right. Yeah.
But also at home, sometimes I've done that at home, like if they're working late in the evening or at night. Last year, I remember being up until midnight or so one night, being furious.
Deadline weeks, yeah.
Yeah. We'll see that as we kind of go along. But now I really do want to talk to you more about actual advocacy and maybe how to be a good advocate. So I don't. There's a lot of places we could start. Maybe let's start with what's the most important thing people need to know if they're going to the Capitol.
Well, the number one thing that you need to know if you're going to the Capitol is that your legislators are people too. When I do this for a large audience, a lot of times the first question that I ask is, why are you afraid? What is it that makes you afraid of going to talk with your legislator? And a lot of times it's a fear around, I don't know them, and they're this super important elected official.
Right.
The prestige of the office just kind of scares people. And the number one thing that I tell people all the time is your legislators are just regular people. Before they were elected to office, they had jobs that varied widely across industry. And so they're just regular people. And whether you think it's true or not, there is almost definitely something, at least one thing that you know more about than they do. And that is your day-to-day life,
Right.
Your quality of life on a daily basis.
Right. I think there's a misconception that they know all this stuff, and they really don't. Like,
Right.
there's lots of things that there's no way they can know everything about 2,000 bills. And
Sure,
so
absolutely.
That's where we are actually the experts, like in coming in. Like I work in HIV for my actual job, and there's a couple of bills related to HIV education standards. And so I had people call me and just be like, do you know the statistics on some of this? I'm like, of course,
Right.
because there's no way that they're going to know that very specific niche of stuff.
Right, and so, and that's a good point. Nonprofits and other organizations, corporations and others as well, provide a great resource for legislators in terms of the statistics and the numbers. But in terms of your personal story, I, as a nonprofit, employee, as the government affairs director, I know the personal stories of some people, and I can certainly tell those stories, but having that person tell their story carries way more impact. So you going to the Capitol and telling your legislator about your particular classroom, right? And how much money you've had to spend out of your personal pocket for supplies for your students, right? Or you going as an employee in the wind energy industry and saying, I need you to step up and do more for wind energy, because if you don't, I personally, a constituent of yours, will lose my job, right? So the one thing that you are for sure an expert in, that your legislator is not an expert in, is your personal experiences and the way that the laws that they make impact you.
Right. I think that's the stuff that you hear if you do watch them in session on the floor. They always share personal stories. And this makes sense. I thought about, like, if you watch any presidential speech or any big national congressional speech, at some point they'll say, I met Joe the plumber from
Right.
home state of whatever, and they share those personal stories because that's what connects. And the joint session speech, there's always someone in the audience.
Right, the State of the Union, they point
Yeah.
at someone and they say, oh, here's
Right.
this brave person from this corner of the country who did
Right.
this thing that inspired this law, right?
And it's always funny to think about that, because that could be any of us,
Right.
right? Like all of us have an important story, and so sharing that is what makes a difference. And we've got some tools to help with that I will talk about later. Well, Anna, why don't you think more people go to the Capitol? Like, what's the barrier?
The number one response I hear when I ask that question to people is that fear, and it's a combo fear, right? It's a fear of the auspiciousness of the office, but really underlying, it's a fear of looking foolish
Right.
in front of that person. And so the thing that I really try to convey is there's no way that you can look foolish while telling your story, right? There's no way that you are less informed, or that you being less informed makes you less worthy of your legislator's time. Right. It may be that they do know more about the issue than you do. It may be that you're there to advocate on tort reform, and you're advocating to a legislator who is a lawyer and who will maybe correct you on a couple of things that you say. But when they do that, they don't do it out of malice, right? So I think that I think the reason that I think people don't visit as often is because, they see a lack of knowledge as a barrier to access.
Right. I see a comment here that I think connects. Crystal said, do the legislators actually read letters and emails? From everything I've heard, yes, usually, with caveats.
Yes and no, right? So the answer is yes if you send a personal email, and no if you send a form email.
Like a mass.
And that's just kind of, yeah. So one of the things that gets really complicated is there is no wrong way to contact your legislator, but some of the ways to contact your legislator are significantly more effective than others. So for example, sending your legislator a form letter is a way to contact your legislator that might let their legislative assistant or their executive assistant know that you stand in opposition to that bill. But like with brief phone calls, like with a 2-second, hi, I oppose X bill, thanks for your time, phone calls, right? What mostly happens is that assistants read those emails or take those calls and make tallies. So, and I want to be clear that we're talking strictly on the state level here. The whole advocacy game changes when you're trying to advocate to national folks. And we could have that conversation like on a different channel. It's like a whole another 3 hours. So, but at the state level, I can guarantee you that if you write a personal email to the person who is your representative or your senator, the person for whom you are a constituent, you take the time to write a personal email that tells your story about why you're against that, or even just a basic outline of the issues of why you're against it instead of a form email, that email is probably 3 or 4 times more likely to get in front of directly your representative or your senator. Now, I can't make that promise for every representative or senator. I don't know how every representative or senator's office works. They all have their own personal preferences on which emails they want to read, which calls they want to take. So some of that depends on getting into your representative or your senator's office, meeting them, and asking them, what's the best way for me to get in touch with you if I want to follow up? Right? So that's actually one of the reasons I love going to the Capitol, is because once I meet you in person and you've met me, right, I can say, hey, is it better to send you an email or give you a call when I have some questions?
Yeah. And a lot of them will give you their cell phone number, which people don't realize. And so it's it's been weird for me. They're like, well, just text me. And I'm like, okay. And so that's been funny. Also on our website, we have this. It's called A Letter to My Legislator. It's a pretty simple thing, and it really is designed to be a framework to help. So let's fix this OK.gov is our website. There's a resources tab, and this is one of them. And it's got your info and then kind of 3 spots. And the first one is the issue that is most important to me is ... This is important to me because ... And then I would like to ask you to do blank. Oppose, support, whatever it is. Do something else. And if you want, call me later, whatever it is. And it's a way so you can print these out. We bring these to all of our events too as a way so you can have a framework. A lot of people will take this, fill it out like there in that morning session, and then go to their legislator's office and kind of use it as a script so they've got something in case you get like stage fright, which is totally understandable.
Right.
You can read it and you can leave it behind too. It's designed to be pretty short, so just like a sentence or 2. And you can, and it's written in your own handwriting, so be legible, but also like that is a little bit different than just like, nailing out a mass email to 149 people.
Right, and you might be saying, Anna, you just said don't use a form. The difference between this form and what I'm talking about when I say form email or form letter is those are ones where you just plug in your name and your address and your signature, right? This is a form email or a form letter in that it helps you formulate, right, what it is you want to say. It helps you lay out your argument instead of just being like, the same email 400 times.
Right. And you don't have to use our form. It's like, if you use it as a guide, that's totally fine. Whatever you want. I know people will it's helpful to kind of know that format of like, I need to talk about what's important, why it's important, and what I want you to do about it. You can type that into an email or a Christmas card or whatever you want.
A Christmas card.
Maybe not right now. So aside from that, I mean, you kind of talked about some recommendations of ways to talk to legislators, but can you tell us about like tone and how you talk to them?
Sure. So as someone who works for an organization that is frequently in the news and experiences a lot of pushback from some members of the legislature, I'm going to tell you from experience, I know a lot about balancing your tone when you're really upset about an issue. And I think one of the most important things is, like I said at the beginning, and like I'm going to keep saying, you know, legislators are people. And yes, the issues make us angry, but sometimes it's important, especially in these professional settings, to make sure that we're meeting legislators where they are. And what I mean when I say this is we don't want to come in, you know, just red in the face, screaming when my legislator is trying to take a break and have a quiet lunch. Because what's going to happen is that not only am I going to be seeing red, but also my legislator is going to see red about ever meeting with me again. And that's just the unfortunate fact of the matter. You know, as much as I am really against the idea of tone policing, I believe that if you feel strongly about something, you should be able to express that. I also know that that's not the space that everybody else is in, right?
Right.
And that being a legislator, like, I know that a lot of people might think that it's not a hard job, but I can tell you from personal experience, having a few close friends who are legislators, you know, it is a long day. And I don't want, when I go and advocate, what I want is I want somebody who's going to listen to what I'm saying and not somebody who's going to be like, oh, it's Anna again.
Right.
She's here to yell at me again about her issues. I already know how she feels, right? I want to come in and be able to have a conversation. And that is some, like, as a professional advocate, some of how I want to conduct myself, right? So like I said, you're the only person who's an expert in your life. You want to present yourself as an expert on your life, because if they have questions about things that you have experienced and you build a good relationship with them, they might call you. For real, I had a representative the other day who knows that I'm a notary and knows that I've had some challenges notarizing ballots before, and questions about how many absentee ballots can I notarize and when can I notarize them and where, who's trying to do some work on that issue, who sent me a message and was like, hey, can I sit down with you, because we just talked about me being a notary one day. So when you go in there with that kind of ready to have a conversation vibe instead of ready to go on the attack vibe, it does a lot for building a lasting relationship. And that's the other thing, right? As advocates, that's the goal. The goal is, for me, when talking with legislators, especially legislators who I know do not already agree with me, my goal is not usually to change their mind. My goal is to build a relationship so that I know going forward, I can stop by their office and talk to them and continue that conversation about the issue.
Right. That's you said the word relationship, and that I think is key. My background's in mental health, like I'm a licensed therapist. You see a lot of couples and do couples counseling, and I have joked that's not entirely untrue that I think a lot of what we with Let's Fix This are trying to do is kind of do marriage counseling between the public and the Capitol, and maybe between the parties too. Like, we definitely put people over party. We make a point to be bipartisan and invite people from both sides, because we all are important. And the example I always give is when this started last year, I was living in Senator Irvin Yin's Senate district, and the very first time we went to the Capitol, I was like, oh, I need to look up my people and see what they look like so I can meet them. And so I looked him up online. Okay, I know what he looks like. And then 2 days later, I saw him at another event in the community, and I would have never known that he was even a state senator, much less mine. And so then I was like, oh, shoot, I got to talk to him now.
Right.
So I went up and I just said, Senator Yen. He's like, oh, hi, and super nice, and we had a good conversation. And then I bumped into him, went to his office a couple weeks later at our event, and he was like, I remember you. I'm like, oh, yeah. And then now when I've seen him, he recognizes me. I don't know if he knows my name, which is fine.
Yeah.
I don't live in his district now anyway, but it is a different kind of relationship.
Right.
And so once you do that, then you've got an opportunity to talk to them a different way. And a lot of, our representatives, our senators, you live in their district, and so do they. So you probably shop at the same grocery stores. You go to the same restaurants, the same gas stations.
Now, I will say, as someone who, right, has worked closely with a few representatives and senators in my time, remember what I said at the beginning, right? Which is that your representatives and your senators are just people.
Right.
And if you see them in the grocery store or the gas station, I won't say don't be afraid to say hi, but
don't
ambush them. And when they're, on their break time and their family time, be considerate and compassionate and caring in the way that, remember, it's about building a relationship. It's about saying, hey, we disagree on that issue, but we shop at the same Sprouts, right? You know? So
yeah, because we're all just people. That actually, when I first met Senator David Holt, I knew who he was because he's 11 feet tall, and I was at On the Lawn up on Western Avenue, and I saw him. I was like, oh, that's Senator Holt. But he's with his family, and I didn't want to go interrupt. And
Absolutely.
and then he came up to me and was like, hey, Mr. Fix-It. And I was like, oh, okay. Hello, Senator. And so since then, we've kind of built a friendship, and so that's been, that's different. So now we can disagree and still talk about, okay, well, here's my perspective. All right. I mean, I don't agree with my mom on everything. Like, I don't know why I'm going to agree with someone who's more or less a stranger. We don't have to agree, but we do have to make our voice heard, right? That's the whole, if we don't ever say anything, decisions are made regardless, right? You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Decisions are made either way. Like, they're going to make decisions about these bills, whether or not you talk to them.
Right.
But those decisions are going to be made by those who show up. If you've been around me, if you've watched The West Wing, you know that's good job with the signal. You know that's the truth, right? And so you got to participate. You got to vote, and you got to do more than that. You got to follow up with emails and phone calls and face-to-face stuff.
Well, and so we've talked a little bit about what you should do, right? You should go in with the goal of building a relationship. But I will tell you one thing that you should not do is you should not go in with a folder of 65 pages of evidence about why you're correct and expect your legislator to have time to read those 65 pages. So
while you sit and watch.
While you sit and watch, right? So don't expect your legislator to have a lot of time, unfortunately, right? If you think about it just on on a constituent ratio, right, in terms of how many of you there are to the one of them, and everybody gets a certain amount of that time, that precious time, it's probably calculated down to less than 5 minutes per day. But you can probably expect to get a minimum of 10 to 15 minutes from your legislator, catch them in the hallway. But you need to know that they live fast-paced lives. They don't remember. I mean, I can barely remember all the bill numbers, and it's my job, right? They can barely remember all the bill numbers, and it's their job. When you go to advocate, do not walk in there and expect them to, to say, I'm here to advocate on HB 1113, and expect them to know exactly what that bill is. I mean, I was in someone's office this morning, and someone walked in and said, hey, have you heard about HB number? And they were like, I will when it hits the floor, right? Because there are literally, like we said earlier, thousands of bills. It's hard to keep up. So go in there ready to talk about the issue and connect the number in their mind for them, right? But then the other thing not to do, right? Don't bring 65 pages. Bring one page, ideally a single-sided page. Think about it like a resume, right? Mm-hmm. How many minutes is it? Do they say HR managers look at resumes?
50, like less than 5 seconds.
Less than 5 seconds, right? Same thing with why your junk mail is flashy, right? We have 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes, less than 20 seconds to catch your attention. The same thing can be true of your legislator. So Together Oklahoma and Let's Fix This and Oklahoma Policy Institute, other organizations have great one-pager fact sheets. You can make your own one-pager fact sheet. Lots of organizations have them, but be prepared if you need statistics to back you up. Here's one page on that issue. Ideally, write yourself at the top of that page how you want them to vote. Vote no on HB, like I said, 1113. I don't actually know what that bill is, so please don't
it could be
good like, Anna just said that bill was terrible, so it could be great. I don't know.
I think two of the most frequent questions that I get from people are what do I do how do I talk to my legislator if we don't agree on anything, like if we're on opposite ends of the political spectrum?
Sorry, I do have a cough. I've been holding it back until now, and now I'm all choked up. Well, like I said, before, if you don't agree on anything, they're still your legislator. I mean, I have lived in places where my legislators and I have agreed on absolutely nothing, and they're still my legislator. They still need to hear what I have to say, even if they don't vote my way every time. And it can be as frustrating as I want, and I can do as much as I want to maybe find somebody. There are some great examples of that happening over time, right? In fact, some of the biggest changes that people figure out where is the common ground. So you might think that you disagree on everything, and you might disagree on one specific issue, but when there are thousands and thousands of bills, I will tell you that if you think that you and your legislator don't agree on anything, you probably just haven't found the one niche issue that you guys do agree on. Right? The enemy of the enemy is my friend.
And I also think it's important to maybe ask about why they voted a certain way sometimes, because sometimes there may be a reason they voted for or against something that you don't know about. Something political
Personal
behind the scenes.
Story, political something, party pressure. But it could also be, a lot of legislators have to weigh very carefully how they represent their district versus how they represent themselves, And there are a lot of tough issues out there where you might live in a swing district, right, where you're just about 50-50 in terms of Democrats and Republicans, or maybe, it's the other way, there are a lot more Republicans than there are Democrats, and then your legislator has to weigh, how do I best represent my district versus how do I best represent myself or what I think is personally right. And so that can be a really hard and complicated conversation. So when you and your legislator don't agree on anything, also don't be afraid to hold them accountable, right? To make a note of how they vote and say, I'm paying attention. I know that you're going to continue to vote no on these education issues. That's how former Representative Jason Nelson, that's one of the reasons that he got pushed out of office, was he got branded as an enemy of public education, and they pulled up his voting record on public education and said, not only has he been pushing for ESAs, here's his long track record of voting against education. And we're able to make, to push Jason Nelson to a point where he decided that he didn't want to run for office again. So tracking that voting record can be really important.
The flip side of that, so that's, I kind of ask, how do we talk to folks that we disagree with? But also, I know some people are like, well, my people vote the way I want them to all the time. Where's my role in all this? Is it still important that I go and talk to them?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Still important that you go and talk to your legislators. Number one, because you still have a story to tell. And just because your legislator agrees with you doesn't mean that that legislator is in the majority. And that can vary widely on many issues, right? It's not just the people who win debates who need the stories to tell, it's the people who lose them too, right? Two, just because they vote the way that you want doesn't necessarily mean that they're advocating on your issues. So you might have something that's an issue for you or an issue in your district that hasn't been brought up as legislation, and you having that conversation with your legislator could actually lead to legislation being created on that issue. And number three is because you should know who your legislators are, just in case something comes up where they're not going to vote the way that you want them to, or that you think that they should.
I think also, like, what I've kind of explained it is that our job is to give people like a backbone, right? Like, there's a lot of people that will just show up and vote because they're not sure, they didn't hear from anybody, or like they think, you know what, I think that my district might want me to vote this way, but I haven't really heard from anybody.
Right.
And so if we tell them, like, hey, like, this is what we support, even if that's against their party in some cases. And I think a lot of folks are maybe surprised at how often someone they think, like, that they've got a Democratic representative who might vote against the party because it's the right thing to do, or a Republican that votes against the party because it's the right thing to do. And it takes a strong conviction and maybe blaming it on the constituents to say, like, I know you want me to vote this way, but my people want me to vote this way.
Well, and accountability goes both ways, right? Where I was just saying, hold your legislators accountable for things that you don't like. When you hold them accountable for things that you do like and you say, hey, I asked you to vote this way and then you did it, then when someone who wanted them to vote against it comes in and says, I didn't like that you voted this way, it didn't represent me, they can say, well, I heard from these 15 people in my district that said that was actually, that is representative of our district, and they did want me to vote that way. So,
and I also think that I've kind of learned this year, since I'm still new to this, but that's that legislators talk to each other about issues. Like, so we advocate or lobby to them from the public, but they also talk to each other, and so they will, like, try to go convince someone else of their party, of the other party, like, hey, can you vote for this or against this, like this, and they will share our stories with each other behind doors, not necessarily on the floor, and so that's important there too. Well, thank you so much for all that feedback.
Yeah, you're welcome. I got you.
We are, so we've got about 15 minutes left. I want to wrap this up within an hour because that's how long lunch is.
Right.
I would like to eat at some point.
Sure.
So a few things. Something that I'm actually, I think this is a Kellyanne Conway quote, if you can believe that, but it makes sense.
Okay.
Maybe she got it from somewhere else.
Okay.
We'll stay off that level. But that I think what we as people, as advocates, what we all need to do is not just pay attention to what offends us, because there's a lot of stuff offensive, like about the budget, and about some of the policies that are out there. Not just what offends us, but talk about how it affects us. So I think often that's the part that she said, and I was like, this actually makes sense.
Can I counter that with a Joe Biden quote?
Please.
If you show me where your budget is, I'll show you where your values are.
There you go. So, yeah, well done. See, there's wisdom on both sides. But I think often we get on Facebook or on Twitter and we complain about what's offensive, like, oh my God, oh, this is terrible, oh, whatever. But we don't talk about how it actually affects us. And a lot of stuff you might, like, a lot of things are offensive to me, but they don't affect me, at least not right now. Like, I don't like, teacher layoffs, and my kids aren't in school yet, but they will be in like the next couple of years. And so even though I'm not being affected just yet, like, I want that. Those are issues that do affect me down the road. There's other things that may affect people I care about. So whether it's about people with HIV, it's teachers, it's healthcare, whatever. Like, there's lots of things out there, and I think that's important. I've got a friend that works. He does like case management and therapy for children that are in DHS custody, and for him as a care provider, he's frustrated because DHS funding cuts mean it's a revolving door for child welfare workers. And it's hard for him to care for patients when they have a new social worker every couple of months, because there's no consistency. And so that is bad for children I've never met. Like, that's frustrating for all of that. And so I think, those are things that affect us as people. So I showed you that letter to my legislator. Some other things that are on our website that we also bring to all of our events. One is like a map of the Capitol. It's pretty simple. There's 2 pages, so it's like front and back of all 5 floors, plus the basement. And it kind of helps lay it out. It's just helpful to kind of remember where you're at and where things are. And if you've never been there before, you might want to know what's going on inside. Also, the bathrooms are marked on every floor. And also, under the Get Involved tab, to make it easy for you, is a link to the Oklahoma State Election Board with voter registration forms. I've started bringing these everywhere. Like, I keep them in my bag because a lot of folks may be registered, but they need to update the registration. Even my mom, I saw her, and she was like, oh, I need to change my registration. like her party affiliation? And she's like, I guess I can go online. I was like, poof, here
Right,
you go. Like,
right.
you do it. If you have to just mail it in, just takes a stamp. If you come to one of our events, just give them to me and I will mail them in. Because if it's, and in fact, we did an event in Norman last month and a woman filled it out and she said, I filled this out 3 times and I've never mailed it because I don't have a stamp and I don't want to go buy stamps. And I said, give it to me. And so I put it in the mail with my mom's and mailed them off.
Well, and I'll give you a hot tip, which is that if you don't want to mail it in, but you happen to be near one of your county election boards, actually what you need to do is just drop it off at your county election board. So you can print it out at home, and if you're, say, going to the Capitol for one of our events, and you happen to live in Oklahoma County, and you get off 44 right there at Lincoln, it just so happens that the Oklahoma County Election Board is right there on Lincoln, right on your way on and off the highway. So you can just stop in and drop it off, or we can drop it off for you. I often tell people, that I will mail it in for them if you fill it out when you're with me in person, or if you come to my office and fill it out.
Good question from Nancy here. Do elected officials...
Oh, that's my mom.
Hi, Mom.
Hey, Mom.
Do elected officials ever offer office hours in the evening or on Saturdays?
Yeah, actually they do. Okay. Some of them do. They're not office hours the way that you would think of, in the Capitol, but at least around the Oklahoma City area. I'm not sure about Tulsa folks. Keep an eye on legislators' Facebook pages, Twitter pages. I know that Representative Cindy Munson in House District 85, Representative Jason Dunnington in House District 88, and a few others I feel have been they'll do coffees at a place in their district. I think it was last week Representative Munson was at Vintage Coffee, which is up on 50th and Western here in Oklahoma City. She was like, I'll be there for 2 hours, stop by anytime. And actually during the spring does an event called Run with Your Representative, where she invites everybody to come hang out with her in the morning, Saturday mornings at Hefner Lake, and just go on a short little jog and chat about whatever issues are pressing to you.
Also, just call their office and ask, because in almost every case I know, their assistant is the keeper of their schedule kind of all the time, and they will know what's going on better than the representative or senator. And if there's not anything, then create something. So pretty soon on our website, we're going to have some kind of testimonial videos from participants, like just regular folks that have come and done the Let's Fix This stuff. And one of them is some friends of mine who started hosting dinner parties with the purpose of discussing politics with other people. And I know that they've tossed around the idea of inviting your legislator to dinner and say, hey, we've got a group of neighbors, we're going to have a cookout. Would you want to come and kind of hang out? And a lot of them will make a chance, or say, hey, we're going to all meet at a coffee shop. Can you come and meet with us?
Absolutely. If you can guarantee that everyone in that group is a constituent, that ups the appeal of legislators a lot, because their goal, is to speak to as many constituents, or their goal ought to be, For most of them it is. I can't guarantee for every legislator, but their goal ought to be, and often is, to speak to as many constituents as possible. And the other thing to know is we kind of have been dancing around it, but session is actually only in from Monday until Thursday. So on Fridays, those are district work days. And so if you're trying to get an appointment with your legislator and you can't get an appointment with them because you don't live in the Oklahoma City area and they're down here for session Monday through Thursday, you have flexible time on a Friday. Fridays are actually great times to call your legislative assistant if you live in a rural area, if you live in the Panhandle, if you live in Tulsa, if you live in Idabel, whichever corner of the state it is. I guess I didn't shout out to Lawton or, the southwest corner at all, but whichever corner of the state it is that you live in, on Fridays, the idea is that your legislator is back in your district, and actually even times they'll be back on Thursday afternoons. And not right now. I'll tell you that right now they'll run really long today, and next week, same thing, they'll run really late into the day for session right now while they're trying to get through all these bills. But especially during committee times, Thursday afternoons and Fridays are a great time to get meetings with your legislators in their districts, at their home district office, or at a little coffee shop, or lunch, a good new lunch spot that you would love for your legislator to stop by and get to know their district a little better.
Yes, good question. if you guys have other questions, please type them in. Obviously, we can see them and we'll read them. And while you do that, I'm going to kind of do a recap of some things
Twitter
as we. Anna's going to check Twitter.
I'm going
as
to check
well.
Twitter.
Super. I will talk. So recap. March 22nd, so Wednesday, in like 2 weeks. It's going to be our next event, 9 o'clock in the morning, in the Blue Room on the second floor of the Capitol. We're going to meet there for about an hour, have some information, some instructions, hear from a few legislators. Then we'll go out and do office visits. And you're welcome to go by yourself. Bring a friend. If you happen to be watching this and you don't live in Oklahoma City, that's tremendous. It's easy for all of us that live here to go down to the Capitol.
Yep.
I drove past it on the way here. But I know for many of you it's harder. So if you can get there, I mean, even by 10 o'clock, we'd love to have you. And your reps would love to hear from you because it's hard for rural folks to drive in. Hang out all day. We'll do a great time.
And I'll tell you that if you live outside the Oklahoma City area and you can't drive down that day, feel free to call in on the 22nd and say, hi, I'm with Let's Fix This. I'm a constituent out in Wapanucka. I'm from Adair, and I'm with Let's Fix This. I'm calling as a member of that organization, and I want to talk to you about this issue. So even if you can't be here in person, you can still be a part of the Let's Fix This community and advocate and participate in the ways that are available to you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So 9 o'clock on March 22nd in the Blue Room, hang out. And that evening from like 6 to 9 or whenever you want to go home, we'll do our Capitol crawl. All of these events are on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Let's Fix This OK. You probably already know that because you're probably watching us on Facebook. So click over on the events. It's also, if you have friends that aren't on Facebook, I have a few of those.
Yep.
And people who probably got sick of it. I also put everything on our website, letsfixthisok.org. I did want to highlight a couple of other apps and websites. One, I've showed this before.
I've got it right here on my phone,
You
too.
got it pulled up?
Oh, yeah.
The Oklahoma 56th Legislature.
Yeah.
If you search for OAEC 56, excellent job,
Yeah.
Vanna.
Thank you.
It's got,
Hand modeling.
you can go in and it's got all the House and Senate, kind of all the people, and then if you click on each person, it has them, their district, a map of their district, what committees they're on. You can email them directly from the app. It's really handy.
You can take notes if you meet with them.
Keep it in there, and they update it every year, which is super handy. Another one that I just found out about is turbovote.com. So you've probably heard us, if you know David Glover, you've definitely heard him talk about registering to vote by mail or vote absentee, which you can still do, and they will mail a ballot to your house that you can fill out. You can have someone notarize it and mail it back in.
You can come to my office. I'll notarize it for you.
Skip the line. That's really handy because then it's like an automatic reminder of when you have elections coming up because they're easy to miss.
Yeah.
For example, April 4th is a election here in Oklahoma City, a runoff for city council and school board.
And actually, I'm pretty sure that April 4th date is true if you're anywhere in the state that has a runoff.
Yeah, there's one in between now and then, I think.
There is.
Well,
there was
Tuesday.
one on Tuesday,
Yeah.
for the special election in District 28.
Right. There are elections in 11 out of 12 months this year for most of the state.
Yeah, for your school board,
Right. We
city
think of them
council, for
something.
Yeah.
So turbovote.com. It's free. You can sign up, and they will send you an email and a text. And I tried it out before in anticipation. And just the other day, you may have seen me post. I got an email and a text at the same time about this April 4th. And so I was like, ooh, well, if they're keyed into whatever database, so they know based on my address that I've got a city council runoff election. That's very specific, and that's super handy because I'm much more likely to check that. Once you know, you can go online, look at your ballot on there. You can set a reminder in your phone to don't forget to go vote that day. So that's really handy. On the federal level, there's an app and a website. It's called Countable. If you just search for Countable in the App Store, I think it's on both. It has like a little flag thing. It'll tell you whenever your congressmen, your senators vote. It's countable.us is the website.
Yeah, and there are a couple other services that will summarize votes for you daily. I get a mega vote email every day that tells me what all of the votes were on every piece of federal legislation that got voted on that day. So there are a lot of different resources on the web for vote tracking at the federal level. At the state level, it's pretty much like you got to be plugged into the Journal Record Legislative Reports, Twitter. They tweet out all the vote counts on things and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, we're going to put out like a list of good follows on Twitter because that's been a huge help for me. Some other key dates just to know coming up next Tuesday. I guess like almost every Tuesday is Education Day at the Capitol. Next Tuesday in particular, there is a couple of groups. The Oklahomans for Public Education is going to be there, and also the Tulsa Classroom Teachers Association, because next week's spring break.
Yep.
So they're going to come on Tuesday, I think around 9 o'clock in the morning. If you're interested in education and you want to meet some other Okla Ed folks, that's a good day to show up. Hashtag Okla Ed. Also, if you really want to get involved in one of the two major parties, now's the time, apparently. I just learned this in the last 2 weeks. So for the Oklahoma Democratic Party, precinct meetings for most precincts are tonight, which is late notice.
Pretty sure it's statewide.
Tonight.
Yeah, it's tonight.
They'll have county meetings around the end of the month, plus or minus 7 days from the 25th, which is weird, but district meetings are April 22nd, and then the state Democratic Convention is May 20th. For full details on that, if you lean to the left, okdemocrats.org. On the other side of the aisle, for the Republicans, precinct and county meetings are going on now. Some have already happened. I didn't look for specific counties because I'm hoping that there's people not just from Oklahoma County watching this. The state convention for the Republicans is April 8th, so that's coming up soon. And for full details on that, okgop.com.
Does the Oklahoma Libertarian Party have precinct meetings?
I didn't have a chance to print that off before I got
If you're
here.
with the Libertarian Party and you know about precinct meetings, give us a shout.
Yeah, tweet it.
Let us know.
Share it. We'll share all this stuff. I need to make a new blog post. It's been a while, and kind of put all this out there. So again, March 22nd, Capitol Day, Capitol Crawl for us. Come get a button if you don't already have one, or wear yours from last time because you look awesome. And then just a quick plug for Way Out. April 12th will be our April date, and it's going to be awesome. I had a meeting yesterday, and we're going to partner with Oklahomans for the Arts. It's Arts Day at the Capitol, which is always fun. Last year they had Sugar-Free All-Stars, and it was rocking. It's not going to be quite that loud this time because some folks are trying to work. But there will be live art and music performances. We're doing some advocacy training for beginners and experienced advocates. It's people from across the state that come. It should be really great. You'll be seeing more information about that from us coming up. We may also have a really cool event on April 2nd here in Oklahoma City. Literally, we're planning that right now in my spare time. So again, March 22nd for this month, April 12th for next month. And that's about all we have. If you tuned in late, go back and watch it. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great lunch and have a great rest of the day.
Bye, guys.